Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the first ever Divorce Not Divided podcast with me. I'm Nathan Burkart, and
I'm Megan Phillips.
and we're really excited to be talking to you today. And
Yeah.
so this is our first ever episode, our pilot episode. So we are super excited to jump into what we think is a very interesting topic, but we want to take time to make sure that you know who we kind of are. And so, but
Yeah.
but first we have a disclaimer.
We do.
We do. So we're all official and so I've got a disclaimer that we're gonna put into this introductory episode. We want to make sure that everybody understands that this is our story. There are situations where co-parenting isn't possible due to several factors such as history of abuse, neglect, substance use, and other barriers. Our aim is not to encourage divorcees with these circumstances to seek our methods. This is a lifestyle podcast, not professional therapeutic advice. We are not licensed therapists unless you did something. Well, you're a licensed speech language pathologist,
I
but you're
am.
not a licensed therapist.
That's correct.
Therapist. Our website, divorcenotdivided.life. We provide resources for anyone experiencing a situation where their mental or physical health is in jeopardy. That's not quite up yet, but that's something that we are going to be working on.
And we'll let you know when it launches as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of our disclaimer. That's all the official stuff. So now we get to all dive in and talk about what everyone is here for today. So, Megan, would you like to tell everybody who you are and
Yeah. So, getting to know me a little bit. So, I was born and raised in Kansas. Um, I went to college in St. Louis for musical theater, and that's where I met Nathan. After college, we moved out to Los Angeles, and lived there for about 8 years. Um, yeah, I think let's get a little bit about you, dude.
yeah? So, I grew up in Wisconsin, and then obviously, as Meg said, we met in St. Louis. But I was a musical theater major, so yeah, I'm probably the farthest thing away from like a doctor or a therapist or an attorney or anything like that. So I was a musical theater major, and then I wanted to be an actor, so I moved out to Los Angeles and lived out there for 8 years. And I did a lot of cool little projects. I started a little nonprofit theater company and managed a restaurant and managed an acting school before I moved back to Wisconsin to raise our kids, which, we've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Yep.
And they are really cool, amazing people, and a big reason why we're doing this today. So that's kind of some, a brief background on me. You'll probably, over the course of all this time, hear all the amazing things that come out of my brain and out of my head.
And
I
here,
laugh because I say some stupid things sometimes. So that's the Nathan disclaimer, that I will sometimes make up words that don't exist.
but they're really cool words.
Yeah, and I'll say them very confidently. So
Absolutely,
you
he
will
will.
think that you're silly if you don't know the meaning.
Hmm.
So you might be sitting there like, what's that word? And you just have to understand that I'm just on a different planet sometimes.
It's a Nateism, and they are incredibly well constructed, actually. But so yeah, I in Los Angeles, I did a couple of fun little projects such as Marry Nate, and
Because that was a project for sure. Yeah.
and then and then I
That's
also
supposed to marry your projects.
well I
You
did, and so I married Nate, and then I also expanded on my education and went from musical theater major or minor to I became a speech language pathologist out in California, and then helped with that theater company and all that jazz.
Yeah. So then we're here today. So obviously, because this is about divorce, the given circumstances are that Megan and I were married at some point, and so
So,
we
2011.
got married in 2011, and so we were married for approximately. Our divorce was final in 2022.
2023.
2023, March of 2023.
So we technically were married for 11 years, but had separated right before the 11-year mark hit.
Right. And so, and in that process, we had 2 kids, and we had a house together, and we were building lives together.
Yep.
And we went through our own stuff,
Yeah.
and included, lots of therapy and we'll get into a little bit of that as we go about the why. But the
Right.
main objective of this podcast is really to talk and explore about co-parenting and rebuilding a relationship after divorce. Because Megan and I started out as best friends,
Absolutely.
and we're still really, really good friends today. I think that I would be lying to any of you if I said that during the divorce there was a time where our friendship was probably in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Um, I was not a very happy person in like my life, and I very much did not care for you at all. And and I made sure a lot of people knew that, and
Yeah.
within our inner circle. So
I mean,
I
don't take all the blame. I also struggled through that as
yeah,
well. And,
right.
we had people we confided in and used strong words about each other to them.
Yeah. So when you kind of look at this podcast, I want everyone to know that we are going to try to be as transparent and honest as possible.
Yeah.
Um, we both believe in taking accountability and being able to articulate things like what is the worth of the other person, that what are some of the things they brought to the table. But we also believe that it's important to sit down and kind of look at perspective and understand where somebody else is coming from. So you'll hear a lot about the things that we have failed at, as well as some of the things that we think we're succeeding at.
And things
And
were growing.
yeah, and the thing is, it's like um one of the key things that we'll talk about is how divorce sucks. You'll hear me say that 50,000 times. I'll probably put it on merch when we have merch one day. Like I have a t-shirt that says divorce sucks.
Yeah.
Because like our goal, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talked before, like our desire is never to romanticize divorce at
No.
all. We think that if you are considering getting a divorce, or it's something you've thought about, that you take time to go to therapy and see if there's options that are available to you. But
I mean,
um
depending on your
yeah,
circumstances and
sure.
what's right for your mental and physical health, yeah, like putting the work in because, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with communication.
Yeah, for sure. And we do recognize that like everyone's divorce is very personalized, right? And
Yes.
so it's like there's no like clear cut thing that says you are ready to date 2 years and 3 months after you've been separated,
Right.
or there's like no thing out there that says you shouldn't ever get married again, And so every single person puts together their own boundaries and their own expectations.
Yeah.
Personally have a firm belief that you determine what's appropriate in your own life.
Right.
You listen to the feelings and what other people think are important,
Yep.
and you determine it based on how they feel, if what's appropriate for you.
Right.
So the term of, well, that's not appropriate, that's a very personalized term. That's
Right.
something that somebody might say that's appropriate over here, but it's not appropriate over here. It's all based on the given circumstances surrounding everyone's divorce, because they're all very different.
And to really lean into that, giving you guys some context about what happened between us, what happened between our friendships and relationships that
Yeah,
led to a divorce. Just a little context is going to help, I think, our listeners understand how we're able to move forward the way we are
sure.
and talk openly about what we had to go through in the processes we had to
Yeah.
go through. Um, I mean, when it came to therapy, when it came to collaborating and communication, what ended in having a divorce and moving forward with a divorce was my sexuality. I had to figure that out. And when it was figured out, it led to our marriage no longer being something either of us could continue moving forward in.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that process is one that requires a lot of time. It could be an episode or its own podcast, really, navigating what happened there. But for the sake of this podcast, and we might touch on it later, but for the sake of this podcast, just knowing that that's what led to our divorce.
Right.
Right.
We, in our circumstance, we didn't have anything that was like physical abuse, or um like uh, I wouldn't even say it was completely like falling out of love with each other or
Mhm.
anything like that. What happened with us was an acknowledgement of who we were as people
Yep.
and understanding that we both deserved the opportunity to be with somebody who loved us in exactly all the ways that we feel like we should be loved as people.
In a marriage.
Yeah, and I feel like that's important for everybody, you know? And it's just like, do I, Nathan Burkart, believe in commitment 100%, you
Right.
know? Do I believe in working on stuff? Yeah, 1000%.
Yeah.
Do I believe in acknowledging when I mess up and taking and making mistakes and trying over and over and over again? I do. But like when we looked at what we were at, we had gotten to a point where I didn't like who I was becoming because of the things that were going on, and neither did you. And
No,
so,
and not that I didn't like where he was becoming. I
yeah,
didn't like who I was becoming. We were becoming people that no longer fully lived our value system.
yeah,
That
that's great. I love that.
yeah, and
I
when
think, can we edit that so I say that?
sure.
I'd like to. I'd like to be
Like,
the
let
one
me
that
have a
says that.
couple of gems.
Yeah.
You are putting some gems in, Nathan.
Okay.
No, but really, when you get to a point in any relationship where you're starting to behave or act in a way that no longer aligns with who you or what you know your values have
Mhm.
always been,
Mm-hmm.
then there needs to be a time of honest reevaluation.
Yeah.
What's preventing us from being the best we can be?
Yeah, and 100%. And I lead with this story. So, you'll hear a lot of our stories as we go here, but I'm going to lead with this one. And so, I have wanted to be a dad since I was probably 8 years old. And so, I honestly, like in the game of life, when we were playing that, right? I cared more
And
about.
for those who are very young, that's a board game.
That's a board game where you got these little cars and you go around and you can buy a house and all these things. I didn't care about the house. I didn't care what job I was. All I wanted was the little people in the back. And so that's
Dude, you have to care about the house and the other stuff
yeah,
just to
it's
support the
fine.
little people.
Well, I mean, in the game of life, there was actual value of having a split level with an earthquake down the middle of it. And so,
True.
which was an option. And so, but like, anyway, it was sidetracked. So I cared more about having the two little people in the back. I didn't care if they were blue and pink, pink and pink, blue and blue. I cared that they were just two little people in the back. I always saw myself having two kids and having this storybook life that I concocted in my head. But being a dad was the most important thing absolutely in the world to me. And so when, like, I'll still tell anybody that my favorite day of my life was when my son was born because I became a dad. When my daughter was born, it was a whole new favorite experience for me because I'd never been the dad to a little girl before. But that day was the most significant day ever.
I remember when we got in the car
Yeah, yeah.
and you turned and looked in the back seat and we had two little nuggets.
Uh-huh.
One that was almost 2 years old and one that was fresh, fresh out the oven. And you go, I feel like it's complete now.
Yeah, my bucket was full, right? I had everything that I wanted and dreamt up. It was like, and my job was always about supporting the family, right? And so it was like I always wanted to do something with the arts.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. But supporting my family was always the thing that I cared most about. So how I treat my kids is really important to me.
Yeah.
And there was this moment where I did something that was highly out of character, I thought, for me.
Yeah.
And it was something where along the lines of Holden was watching YouTube and I told him he couldn't anymore. And he said something that a lot of little kids will say when they're just angry and they're experiencing feelings, which is like, I hate you. And I got really angry and I looked at him and said, you have no idea what I'm doing right now to keep this family together. And I saw that drop through his body, hearing that for the first time.
Right.
And then I just took a second to realize that I just said that to a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
A 5-year-old kid that I wanted to have ever since I was 8. And I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a dad that created a world where all my kids could be open and talk to me and trust me.
Right.
And I literally threw one of the heaviest things in the world on him when he fully didn't even understand what was going on.
Right.
And was against my values. That's not who I am.
Right.
But that is what I was starting to become.
Right.
But I can sit here and say that now because like you're never really healed from divorce.
No.
I'll be healing from it for the rest of my life. But I'm at a point where I recognize that I would never say that to him today,
right.
Because I'm in a much better state. And so because of that, I do state we're better friends than we were as being a married couple.
Yeah.
Because to me, like we're better. Like every kid wants to see their parents all the time and grow up in a single family household. I get it.
Yeah.
But like that was who I was starting to become. And that's not acceptable. And that wasn't acceptable to me, nor would it be acceptable to anyone else. And what I was doing is creating trauma memories in his life that he would have to probably unpack years later. And so,
And I mean, on the same vein of thought, I was engaging in substance use to numb because I didn't want to feel feelings.
Right.
And it got to a point where I wasn't someone who always did that.
No.
And I would just try to survive. And again, when you find yourself acting out of character, you have to find this moment to completely reflect and say, what do I need to do to feel like myself again, or to feel safe? And it's not that you made me unsafe, but I felt so stuck and confused. So I didn't want to feel that. So I would numb it.
And I will tell you, like, whoever is my next partner, the number one thing in the world I want from them is to feel safe.
Right.
And I think that, I love it when someone feels safe with me.
And I always felt safe with you as a human being.
No,
I
I
almost
get it,
didn't
though.
feel safe with myself
No,
anymore.
I get what you're saying, though. I mean, it's hard when, like, somebody once told me, what do you want in life, Nathan? I go, I just want to be happy because I was just really sad, right? And so, he looked at me and goes, I want to challenge that. He's like, I want you to think about fighting for peace. And I love that. And I use that a lot because he said, happiness isn't sustainable. And he's right. I mean, no one's happy all the time. In fact, if you were happy after your parent passed away, I would say you're not really.
You're kind of certifiable. You're not processing, or you're not.
There's a mask or something.
Right.
It just doesn't feel real, right? And so, but like to me, it's like you need to experience sadness and fear and anger, and even to identify what happiness is, and you need to be okay with the fact that you feel it. I use it this way. It's like, remember when we were in California and every day was sunny?
Yeah, I do.
Sunny days didn't have value anymore.
No, they didn't.
And so what ends up, like,
they were still
okay,
nice.
Maybe I'm talking from my perspective.
No, you're right. You're right. Because
but
we craved like thunderstorms.
Yeah, I was like, when we had a thunderstorm, that was like, wow.
Yeah, I know, we loved it.
It's raining, and
Right.
it's just like, and you don't have that here, right? And so it's just like, you crave what you miss. And so it's like, how many times, you go through a breakup and then you start thinking about all the wonderful things that person did for you, right?
Right.
And so that's very natural because they don't have them anymore, right? At least, like, that naturally goes through my head. And so, I mean,
does it go through your head when you're making dinner?
No. I'm still learning how to cook, and
that's what I mean. Like, you miss my dinners.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, that's maybe a fun thing to talk about down the road. It's like I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to do laundry. There's lots of things that I didn't know how to do. If you came over, I could cook you like a really mean 4 things right now. And I do like watching cooking shows.
I'm really proud of you.
But we'll get into all of that later.
We will.
But like, it was funny because just not to get sidetracked too much, but like, Holden looked at me once and he says like, Dad, you don't make very good food. And I go, okay. And I was like, I'm learning. And all of a sudden, like 3 months later, after I started learning how to cook, he came in and was like, Dad, your cooking's gotten so much better. And I was like, thanks, buddy.
Thanks,
It's
bud.
like, yeah, let's go get you a toy.
Oh my god.
We'll get into all of that too. But anyway, like, so some other topics that we're going to be talking about. I think that one of the ones that we're going to talk about that kind of go along with what we're talking about is repairing your heart after loss. That's going to be one of our first episodes, is understanding the role of what a dumper versus a dumpee has. Going through a divorce, for me, was a traumatic experience, right? And so it's something that, you go through, and we'll unpack a lot of this later. But like, what are some things that like I did, and what are some things that you did to get to the point where you can look at the other person in a platonic way? Because I think being able to look at someone in a platonic way is important,
right?
Because it's not fair for you to be bringing in other people in your life and dating them when you clearly don't have platonic feelings for your former spouse. And how do you go about forgiving and having grace for yourself and that other person? Because like, there's going to be things that both people did in this journey that like suck and they aren't good and they hurt, and you have to sit down and be like, yeah, you know what, they weren't very nice to me at that point. I'm going to sit down and see if I can forgive what happened in that part and give grace to that person,
right?
Because I know I did some things that weren't really great either,
and we'll dive into that with that episode too. I think another episode that you'll be hearing soon will be creating consistency for kids, which is
if you could see me right now, I lack on that.
But really, like,
I'm the easy one.
He is.
Yeah.
But create, like, and this goes along with like open communication and all these other things that we had to establish first, so that these kids, our kids, would be able to feel consistency even though they're in two separate homes.
Right. And we're not talking about with that controlling the other person, right? I don't dictate the rules at Megan's house. She doesn't dictate the rules at my house. But we have some core things that we believe in, such as like when you sign a marriage settlement agreement, you write like what type of religion they're going to learn, right?
Yep.
And so it's like being able to create consistency. So if the other person wants to explore other religions and stuff like that, you have an understanding of what you agreed on the kids learning,
right.
And so there's lots of things there for sure.
Yep. What else, Nate? What else are we going to talk about?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about boundaries for sure. And particularly when it gets into, the realm of dating other people, and this is something that we are learning on the fly with. We are not perfect by any means. And so this idea of collaborative co-parenting and trying to come up with systems and ways that, you can make the other person feel heard and part of your life. I come across I am in the arts, but I also am I'm a business coach. And so I look at things in a very, it's like company org chart sort of way sometimes,
and
right?
he will get into that.
Yeah. And I'll get into that without going into it. But it's this whole idea that you're essentially have two different companies that you're part of, opposed to just one now. But
it's an incredible model, and I think it'll be very helpful.
Yeah. And it's like, and I think it can help a lot of people when they understand that, like, there isn't your life might be fractured in some way or feel like it's got a split, but there's still investment on both sides of your two businesses. But the thing is, it's also important to create a whole nother business, because that other person that you bring into your life deserves to be building that life with you at that point. At least that's my belief.
So, yeah. And again, I think we're going to just really hit hard with communication and collaborative co-parenting. I think other topics we're going to hit will be, challenging some myths that sometimes come along with divorce.
Yeah.
And to help us with
you
some
can
of
just read a Reddit thread. We'll do that maybe some too. Like read through a Reddit thread and figure out how we're all going to hell because of divorce. So,
but no, yeah, I think taking that concept of, demystifying some of the things that people think are typical or should happen when you get divorced, and kind of rewriting our own way of doing it.
Yeah.
And to help us, we are looking forward to bringing on guests on this show. We're looking forward to bringing on licensed psychologists. We're looking to bringing on friends and family members that can give us perspective, because we want to talk about how family units have to adjust and change.
Yeah, for sure.
What their experience was and is as we navigate divorce our way.
Yep. And if you want to come on the show, reach out to us. You can reach out to us on social media. Some people already have. And it's like, there'll be people that a child that went through divorce was like, I wish that my parents considered this. It might be someone that's like, we might be going through something like this. So, I feel lost and I just want to talk. They're like, we're here. We want to be part of your lives. This is the point of having a lifestyle podcast. We're proposing something that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's this idea that society implements norms on us. And there's this belief that once a family unit ends because of divorce, something happened where you have to be completely isolated from each other and hate each other for the whole time. But like, what I'm asking you to do as audience member is to actually ask yourself if that's what love is. Because what love is to me is being able to understand that we do have common values and we do have common things that we all can relate together on, regardless of who you vote for, regardless of what your background is,
your religion,
regardless of your sexuality or how you identify. Caring about people is caring about people. And you are allowed to care and have love for your ex-partner or former partner. Former partner. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we will.
Into your former partner without being actually in love with them, which is what you're striving for, to create that space for someone else. So
and
that's,
of course,
I want you to be open-minded to that, because we're going to be talking about that because it's a belief that we have.
Yeah. And again, that challenge, I'm just going to hit this home. That challenge that he just gave you, which is an important one, is only one that you should take if you are not in physical or mental danger by opening yourself up to your former spouse.
Yeah. Again, the circumstances surrounding Megan and my divorce are not that of we feel safe being with each other right now.
Right.
And we've got 50-50 placement and custody of our kids.
Right.
There's nothing that gets in the way of that.
Right.
And so, we're talking from that perspective.
Right.
And we're talking about our own beliefs in that you should never take anything that you hear here as gospel. Like, you should,
or as therapeutic advice.
You really need to talk to your therapist, your attorney, your family and friends, whoever else you're working with, to make sure that you're making the right decisions for you to keep you healthy and safe. Because that's what we want here. We want someone to feel healed, and we feel like that they've been helped, not feel like that they've just dug themselves deeper and deeper and deeper into the sand, or created new problems for them, or put themselves in any danger at all.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we just really do. We welcome you on this journey. As we do this podcast, we're just inviting you to come along with us for the ride. There are going to be things you disagree with. There are going to be things that really challenge you and your thinking. And then we also, like we said, send in questions. We want you to challenge us as well. And we want you to ask or to say, hey, we want more information on this particular topic, because we're curious about how you guys are navigating this. Because we may miss some things that we just felt were obvious, or we felt we didn't realize were a big deal.
Right.
That happens a lot.
And our format will allow us to do a lot of that kind of Q&A. And so, because like the way that this is going to kind of work, our episodes will start with us talking about challenges that we had for the week with co-parenting 2 little ones. We'll get into that. And then we're going to dive into our topic for the day, which will be a 20-25 minute conversation. And that's where we'll have guests in and stuff like that. And then, we'll end with questions and thoughts.
Yeah, we'll leave space to honor and listen and reply.
Yeah.
So, with that content being wrapped up, I think we'd like to end. We have our awesome producer with us here today, always, but who's going to be asking us some questions. So you can guys get used to hearing that type of format for the end.
Yeah.
Hi, Emmy from MED Media.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so excited about this podcast, and I think that what you guys are doing is just so important to add a positive dialogue surrounding something that for a lot of people is just so negative.
Mm-hmm.
So this witch Erin put on Threads this month. I just left my marriage today. I left my home, my dog, many of my belongings, and my wife. Please tell me this gets better. I don't know if I can handle any worse.
Yeah. I still remember the day that I went out and I hung out with my parents all day, and then went back to my house on the day that Megan moved all her stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And I called my friend Ashley, and I was just like bawling on the phone to her because it was just all gone. But there were still things in the house that still had memories, right? And they were like loaded. And so, and it feels like in the moment that it will never get better. And it feels like in the moment that this is going to be how every day is for the rest of your life. And it does get better, eventually you'll get to a point where you're healthy enough to meet other people. There's a big belief that healthy people meet healthy people, and so taking the time to understand yourself better is important. I went and took a vacation on my own. Like I went out to Maine, and I did like biking, and I went to like Salem, Massachusetts, and I did things on purpose. I went on these things called Nate dates. Nate dates were in the beginning, it was like I can buy anything I want on the menu, no matter how much it was. But then my bank account didn't like that after a while. But the whole point was getting.
You also started therapy.
Yeah, and I started therapy for the first time. Which, if you would have asked me before, I thought therapy was only for people who were messed up, which is kind of a really juvenile way to look at it. But like, I had a great therapist that, actually like was like, "You're a great guy." But like there was parts where I was like, yeah, no one's ever gonna want to be with me. I'm damaged.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was at a point where I didn't really want kids again, or having kids was gonna be difficult for me. So I was like, who's gonna want that,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the thing was like, that's the mentality you go. There's a licking your wounds part of it that I went through, and so I can relate to that so much. And I don't know how you felt, but being on the other end. But yeah, you think it sucks and you think it's never going to get better. But the thing is, what ends up happening is then you have a friend down the road that's going through a divorce now too, and they are experiencing the same feelings, and they can sit down and talk with you.
Right.
And it's like, I had this great friend that called me up and he recommended all these books. He'd been through multiple divorces, and he called me just to see how I was doing. And he was like, I thought I was going crazy in my head. It's like, are these thoughts real? Are these like normal? I was like, man, I'm having them too. And so you feel really isolated until you start talking about it. And then you notice that these are normal feelings. You've just lost something very important to you.
Right. I mean, my experience was different in the fact that, I was the person that left, and we'll get into this in that episode. Dumper situation. But I do remember being fetal position in the bed. And it was when I was deciding whether or not I needed to stay or go. And I remember thinking that if I stayed, I would keep engaging in what I was engaging in to numb myself. I felt stuck, and I just was like, oh my gosh, if I stay, I'm going to get sicker. But I also remember thinking that if I go, I will be broken, because I will have broken you. I will have split up my family, and I would hurt other people, other family members as well. And I was like, if I go, I'll be broken. And I remember truly sitting and feeling for like the first time truly what it was to be between a rock and a hard place, because I didn't know which way to go. When I took the steps to leave, I think we can talk. I think I told you I'm not just doing this for me, and you didn't like it at the time, but I think I told you I'm doing this because you deserve better too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I was able to take that first step.
Yeah. And today I can tell you I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do. And like I say, and like whoever my next person is, like they need, like, I want to be loved fully. You know,
Right.
I want to be loved for the things that make me dorky and
Yeah.
quirky and fun. And you always loved me in that capacity, but I want them to want me because they're sexually attracted to me at the same time, right? And
Right.
so it's just like, you know, that's,
You deserve that.
I do
Yeah.
deserve that. And it's just like, but in the moment, you're just trying to hide and hold on to whatever you got, right? At the cost of anyone. And so,
But I guess to answer her question, or, you know, from the threads, is yes, will be a time, or there'll take a lot of time to not wake up and still feel stuck or confused or scared or lost or at your wit's end. But as each day goes on, I don't remember when it happened, but it eventually happened where I woke up feeling healthier.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it
takes some time.
Yeah, and I also...
And that's that thing where it could take 2 weeks, it could take 2 years, it could take 20 years, you know, you don't know. And I think the only reason I think that, like, we were able to heal in the way that we did was because we knew that everything wasn't lost. It was like, you can look at it being like, you lost everything because that person's gone. Or you can look at it like, let's sit down and talk about what we want our relationship to look like now.
What can we salvage from this?
Yeah.
So it's not the Titanic. Like, it's where...
Well, and, you know, I had a little bit of a cheat code. It's really hard to, like, be sexually attracted to someone that's not sexually attracted to you, right? And so it's just like, you know, and just like doesn't like dudes, you know. And so it's just like, so to me it's just like I was able to figure out that, you know, like I am somebody that somebody will want one day, and like be able to go out there. We just want somebody that loves me in a way that I deserve. And once you find that, not that they're putting a Band-Aid on you, you know, it's like there's this thing about like a rebound relationship or like Band-Aid relationship, right? It's like, you know, I don't know if I necessarily believe in the idea of a rebound. I think that like you fall in love with who you fall in love with, and there's people that come into your lives for specific reasons. You know, there's so many things that come into your life that feel like that they've healed you in other ways. And any person that's worth it will make you a better person in some capacity, right? And so it's like, let's say you're going through all this hurt and they enter your life, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've got all this forgiveness in my heart for whatever, because I'm a better person because they're challenging me in other ways, right? It's like, that's amazing. That's a great human being to have in your life, right? And so like, and there's a lot, like my therapist once told me, it's like, I hope you understand that there's like other women out there. It wasn't just like this was just Megan, and now that Megan's gone, like nobody else is out there for Nathan Burkart. You know, you got to understand that like eventually you'll get to the point where you put yourself out there and it feels okay.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing to mention though, it's like anyone that you do bring in your life, they need to have full transparency too about like, if you still are feeling lost and stuff like that, they need to know where your headspace is at. And so, and that's like one of those things you want to hide because it like shows weakness, right? It's like, I can't tell them that I'm still depressed because of my divorce. So I'm sad because of my divorce, because that means I'm not over her. Well, that's not like 100% true. You know, I was very much over you, but I was still sad that my family fell apart. Right. And so, but ultimately it's like, teach their own. And maybe like if the other person's open to going to therapy and stuff with you, like doing that to unpack that together would be great. You know, I mean, it's something that's totally possible.
I think, you know, Nate, when we did couples therapy, and we can get into this in a different episode more deeply, but like, you know, when we did couples therapy, after one session, you remember what she said to us, right? Do you?
Yeah.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
No, not
Okay.
100%.
So, not 100%, Meg.
Be honest. Be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, no, she goes, usually I'm working with couples who struggle with
Oh,
communication.
sure.
And she's like, you two have no problem communicating with each other. You have no problem hitting the hard stuff, processing it, navigating it, being honest. And I think that's something like, thank goodness we have those skills, because I think that's what guided us through everything.
Yeah, sure.
Is the fact that you and I mean, it helps. You went to school for musical theater, and an actor has to be vulnerable
Yeah.
and dig deep to understand the motivations of humankind and human nature.
But you also learn how to mask yourself too. And so,
True.
and that's, so while I can be communicative and vulnerable.
There it is. Did you guys hear it? It was communicative. It was so communicative.
Communicative. Okay. So I learned how to be communicative, and which is communicative, but communicative's cooler. But I also learned how to disguise feelings sometimes, because that's what makes acting interesting, is when someone is falling apart and they're trying to not let someone fall apart. So, and this is something that we can dive into a little bit later, of like the masks and all that, the heartbreak, but the things that make you strong also can make you weak. And we'll get into that a little bit. So I know we're going to wrap up this one, but our next one, we're going to get into this whole ideology of the dumper versus the dumpy. Yes. And we call it like repairing your heart after loss. So you'll hear a lot about some of the strategies, more of like the Nate dates, which are amazing. And, you'll wish that you had your own Nate dates by the time it's done. That's another merch idea, Nate date.
I want a merch idea.
We got to come up with them and share them with the world, because I'm sharing them in real lifetime. So, but we'll get into all of that. But
can I just have one that says the dumper?
Yeah. Ouch. I just don't want one that says the dumpy. And it's just, as long as it's brown.
Oh,
can we do that?
Yeah.
So,
can we do that?
Our kids
Nate
will
has
want
3
it so
merch
bad.
ideas.
Yeah, I got 3 in just one episode, everyone. So, we'll wrap up. But on behalf of both of us, thank you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
Please tune in regularly. Get through the episode. If you got questions, let us know. Reach out. Do you want to mention the social media handles in case they want to follow us?
Please follow us at Divorce Not Divided Podcast. That's on Instagram, and just Divorce Not Divided on Facebook.
Yep. So thanks for tuning in. We love you all.